Earth with Dr. Lori, and I'm here with Bethany. Hi, Bethany.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Good. Tell me about what you brought.
Okay, so we brought with us today a tanto. It's a short sword in the samurai style. Was used during the feudal times in Japan.
When were the feudal times during Japan? She sounds like she knows, but she doesn't really know. Yeah,
a long time ago.
Long time ago? How long?
Oh,
feudal period. Okay, so here's what happens in Japanese history. Basically, what you have is you have the 1300s to about the 1600s. You have a time period of feudal lords, right? And then you have a time period where the feudal lords go, you know what? The emperor says, we're all moving to Tokyo. It was called Edo then, right? E-D-O. And everybody has to come, and everybody has to spend a particular amount of time in Tokyo, which later it's called Tokyo. This is the time of Japanese woodblock prints and the geisha girls, right? And the pleasure sections, all of those types of things, right? So there are certain things that the lords could actually do in their community, in their culture. So you're looking at a piece and you're saying it's from the feudal time period, so it could be from any time between the 1300s and the 1700s. 400 years, right? Why do you think your piece is this old? How did you acquire it?
Well, we found it actually in a garage. We had just purchased the property, and we were cleaning out the garage.
Okay.
My husband, Jim, found it in the attic portion of that garage.
Hot garage, cleaning it out. You're just trying to figure out what you bought, and the place is just left the way it is, right?
Right.
Everything's left there. You find all kinds of things. And he goes up some ladder up there, and he's got it in from the rafters.
Yep.
And it's sitting up in the rafters.
It was
Am I painting the picture for you? Do you see it in your mind's eye? Okay. So it's sitting up there, and he says, oh, well, I don't know what this is. So how did you find out about the feudal time period, and then it's a tanto, and all the rest of it?
Well, just doing a little research on I love swords, okay, I just do. And
edged weapons or swords.
Okay,
well, it can be short swords, knives, anything with the edge.
Yes.
Edge weapons.
Yes, so not to sound creepy or anything like that, but yes, I do like edged weapons.
Why is it creepy?
It just sounds dangerous.
Because you're a beautiful woman who you're like, ooh, I like weapons.
Swords,
yeah.
Okay,
all right.
Weird, but
okay, but you like doing the research?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was familiar, obviously, with tantos originally, but nothing had I seen that was this like ancient looking. So looking back at it, I did some research, realizing that after World War II, a lot of the soldiers were coming back, and these were souvenirs that they had gotten from the war in the Pacific.
Right. Right.
So we kind of thought maybe it was something that had been brought home by someone in the military and then lost in the attic. So
okay, very commonplace and very typical. My dad was in the Pacific Theater during World War II. So that particular generation is bringing back pieces like this. And the same way that a lot of folks who were in the European theater during World War II are bringing back daggers of the Germans, because many of the Germans, of course, had daggers. The type of actual edged weapon from the Pacific that you could get your hands on would relate very far back into Asian or particularly Japanese culture. So what you have is not your typical, you know, late 19th century, early 20th century sword that you might have, an imperial type of sword or a Meiji period Japanese sword. What you have is a sword that really does go all the way back into the feudal time period. So you have a piece that dates probably into the 1700s or even as late as the 1850s. But it is not your typical World War II souvenir sword that was taken off of course, a possibly fallen Japanese soldier, right? That usually we see from 1880 to about 1930. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So some of your research is spot on, right? Now, when you're looking at this and you like swords, what are the components of the sword that you like to look at? What has to be evaluated so you know whether or not you have a high quality or valuable sword or edged weapon?
Well, in this case, the tang would be something we'd look at first of all, but we'd have to take this apart.
You'd have to take this whole thing apart to actually identify and literally look at the tang. And that is not something we're going to do today, but you would have to do it to give it what we would say a full analysis.
Okay.
Okay. That also should be done in a museum environment, or an environment that's protected from everything from, you know, light to dirt, condensation, you know, breeze, wind, all those things. So it's a particular environment that we would take this apart in. We wouldn't do it in this environment. I wouldn't, you know. Okay, so that's what you're looking at here. And then, of course, you're looking at the blade. So the blade is extremely important, and you can even see that it's still pretty sharp. So how long ago did you find it in in the attic
About
of that garage?
8 years ago.
Okay, about 8 years ago. Okay, and you've had it kept where all this time?
We have it in a little, like, sort of stand on a bookshelf.
Okay, so it's sort of a presentation, look what we have.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So it's in a place of honor. Notice the curve, right? Asian swords, Middle Eastern and Asian swords usually have a curve. The more pronounced curves are going to be for those particular swords that usually are Middle Eastern. You'll see them places like Turkey, places like Jordan, Afghanistan, that kind of stuff. Those Pakistan, those kinds of swords are much more of a curve. This has a slight curve as well. What would it have been used for?
Stabbing.
Stabbing, yeah. So the idea is that basically you're going to either go to one of these or it's going to go in and a turn and a right out.
Yeah.
So you're literally going to do a job on somebody with this. And I would think you still could do that. So as we said, this piece dates between 1700 and about 1850. I'd probably put it as early as 1825 as the cutoff date. This particular piece is in, I would say, excellent condition. And most people would say, really, excellent condition? Excellent condition. Because what you've done is you haven't lost much of the attribute on top. Now, this piece could use a little bit of preservation here. But for the most part, you still do have the piece all intact. It's very common for World War II soldiers to bring back a piece like this. What do you know about the person who had it prior to you? Anything?
We only know the property was owned by a doctor at one point. We don't know if this was his or someone that was related to him.
Okay.
But he was, from what we know, the original owner of the house that we purchased.
Okay. So now if you think about swords, American swords, most of the most popular ones are usually those from the Civil War. So you'll see a Civil War sword circa 1865 or so, and those particular swords, if they're presentation swords, they might have something like hand-carved ivory, or maybe they have gilding, maybe they have gold leaf, maybe they have an inscription on the blade. The Asians, and even the Asians in that particular time period, even as far back, not as much ceremony for those particular types of swords. This one would have been used by someone who was going to literally use it in battle, carry it on their person, and utilize it if necessary. So, any idea on value, Bethany?
No.
Any idea at all? So you're doing some research and you know a little bit about, of course, the feudal system in Japan, and you know a little bit about swords, maybe a lot about swords and edged weapons. No idea about value.
Well, I saw something on eBay that was very similar in much worse condition, and it was going for like $650.
Okay.
So that's all I have.
So you're looking at eBay and you're realizing that the values I'm giving you here are based on a sales record where a similar piece has sold. eBay is a wish, a price, a hope, a dream. Okay? So that person can be right. They could know what it's really worth, and they say, well, I've seen other ones go at $600. Or that person could be, well, I've seen them go at $600, so it must be worth $600. I want you to consider the source, because all of you you're doing this on the computer, click, 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 okay, I can find this. Oh, it looks like that. Oh, and match with the pictures like we're in kindergarten. But basically, the source of what that person whose website you came to or whose listing you came to on any of these auction sites, who knows what they know, or who knows how little they know. Value on your piece? About $2,500. It's nice.
Yeah.
For what you found in the attic.
In the attic, yeah.
In the attic, pretty good.
They clean out the attic more often.
Now, what's wonderful about that, yeah, clean out the attic more often. What's wonderful about it is that it's been maintained and kept in this particular shape for so long. Yeah. The other thing I want you to think about is if you do expose the tang, make sure you do it in an environment where you have a professional with you, me or somebody else, to actually expose it. And then you will actually see information, the calligraphic writing, the information about the piece. It really is amazing, and you've done a wonderful job in maintaining it. And thank you very much for bringing it here so we can see it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany.
Yep.
We've been talking about our appraisal table. I want to recap all the information about our appraisal table, the table that we now have on our set here at What's It Worth with Dr. Lori. This is an Egyptomania circa 1922 to 1925 demi-line, semicircular table with, of course, Egyptian motifs. We talked about the leg, we talked about the marble top, we talked about the 1940s era edition of the mirrors, and we've talked about, of course, the applied ornamental element in brass all the way around of the pharaoh's head, feet, and of course breastplate. Now I'm going to tell you what it's worth. This particular table, a typical revival of the Egyptian time period. This particular table is worth $450. I'm Dr. Lori. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of What's It Worth with Dr. Lori. We'll see you next time.